Well, hello. If you have come to the session titled A Digital Transformation Startup Transforms the Tire Wholesale Market, you are in the right place. And that title is not exaggerated. What Tirehub has done is, I think, truly remarkable. And I feel honored to have Ashok Vantapalli, the VP of IT from Tirehub here. And one of the solutions that Ashok used in their digital transformation was a solution from ToolsGroup. And we have David Barton, the general manager of North America, here participating as well. So with that, we've got lots of great content. I'm not going to do a big, long introduction of our speakers. Let's just get right into it. Ashok, I think the right place to start is just to talk about who Tirehub is and how you got started. And really from the very beginning, the premise was to transform your industry. So maybe you could just say a little bit about that.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Steve, for the opportunity to discuss Tirehub's great story. We're still a very young company, 2.5 years into it, and still really excited about while through the COVID and post-COVID, hopefully, how we're going to transform the industry. So with that said, Tirehub is basically a tire wholesale distributor owned by Bridgestone and Goodyear. And one may ask, why did both big behemoths even come together to form a distribution channel? I guess at the end of the day, they recognized that for customers to be on the tires that they love, they wanted to own the entire value chain, if you will, and ensure the right product was at the right place for the customers to choose whatever the tires that they wanted to be on. And the piece that was missing in the entire link was the distribution channel, if you will. And as a result, we started this company in 2018, July of 2018, but this concept was worked for probably 3 to 4 years before that, and finally came to fruition in July of 2018. And the simple way to explain what Tirehub does is think of we are the sort of the Amazon for Bridgestone and Goodyear and the last mile distribution, logistic, and software services company. That's what we are in the basic premise of that.
So yeah, let me just push on this a little bit. So you're an Amazon, very quick delivery model, but for business to business. You're serving mechanics that fix cars and dealerships and folks like that. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of the business driver for this was that I, a consumer, Steve Banker, would go into my local mechanic and I would need my tire replaced. It would be a Bridgestone tire and I'd ask for Bridgestone, but they wouldn't give it to me because they didn't have it in stock. And they would say, hey, we got another tire exactly the same size. And I'd say, oh, well, okay, go ahead and do that. Yeah. Is that premise correct?
That is absolutely right. I think I'm glad you asked that question. If you look at it, the need actually arises from the end consumer and ends with that. So the supply chain. In the industry, historically, either the problem has been solved to a business to business, which is Tirehub to our large retail chain, or a business to consumer, which is like a TireRack.com, right? But at the end of the day, let's talk through your example, right? What happens actually in the industry, right? You walk into the store, it was a surprise, you had a flat tire, what have you, and you walk into the store and you're looking for the replacement tire. That is a surprise in the sense from a supply chain perspective, right? It's not just-in-time inventory availability. To make matters worse, what happens is in the industry, there are over 100 brands and significant amount of SKU proliferation. So it's always hard for retailers to stock the right tire at the right place, right? Nor do they have the warehouse space to stock all of these things, especially if it's not a fast-moving SKU. So now let's play that out again. You walk into the store, and you say, look, I need 4 Bridgestones, and the only way they can get that is, well, thank you, I can get this done today, provided I can get that tires or 4 tires within 4 to 6 hours of that delivery time, right? That's when this whole thing works. If not, you're at the mercy of the guy behind the counter to put you on tires that they probably have stock or something that they can get in. And this is where both Bridgestone and Goodyear felt like creating that national footprint of last mile distribution footprint and being able to deliver the tire just in time when the need actually arises. And then the big thing is to also to predict what sort of the demand that we'll have in that local marketplace as well.
Right. So what is your footprint, your supply chain footprint? How many metro area warehouses do you have, and how fast can you fulfill orders?
Yeah, so we have 70 distribution centers, and going, even through COVID, we opened up a couple of new distribution centers. We have plans for adding another 5 or so this year, and we'll continue to expand our footprint. But we're a national distributor, depending on which region we are in, we deliver anywhere from 4 hours within a 4-hour window to the same day delivery or next day based on the distances that are available. For most fast-moving customers in, let's take Metro Atlanta as an area, we're within the 4-hour window of delivering that capability or product to the customers.
Beautiful. I'd like to turn to David to introduce ToolsGroup, and I think you're going to see the fit here. If I had to say what one of the things differentiating ToolsGroup is really good inventory managing around long tail, stock keeping units is one place where you guys shine, right? But I'll let you say how you think you're differentiated, and tell folks a little bit about your company.
Great, Steve, thank you very much. And it's a real honor and privilege for us to be here with our really highly valued customer, Tirehub, and to be speaking with Ashok today at the ARC conference. We're really grateful for this opportunity. What ToolsGroup does, we've been in business for 25 years doing one fundamental thing, which is automating the analytics and optimization of getting the right SKU, the right product in the right place at the right time. We do that by optimizing the use of available inventory, the mix of SKUs, against the predicted demand. So we actually use the probability of demand to map available inventory to achieving target service level, to have that tire so the customer doesn't substitute competitors, right? So it relies fundamentally on a very powerful forecasting engine, but the critical piece is the optimization of inventory towards service level to get to the target service level with the limitations of inventory and delivery that you have available to you. At the end of the day, customers don't care about your ability to meet aggregate demand. They care about you fulfilling their order in full, right? So to do that, you have to have optimization to make particularly in the time of this pandemic and all the volatility of demand and supply, you have to make the most of the available inventory that you have. Yeah,
and the title of this this panel has the term digital transformation in it, and my sense is we may be using that term, overusing that term a little bit. I don't think we're overusing it for this case study, but in terms of supply chain management, how do you look at digital transformation? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, fundamentally, as you try and take on the type of challenge that Tirehub is taking on to disintermediate and to accelerate the velocity of inventory and getting to from supplier to customer, the complexity of the number of SKUs and the variability of demand fundamentally requires a digital transformation to build a automated model that represents the real world behavior of your supply network, and then to have the analytics that can achieve that optimization. That is the critical digital transformation. So you're taking all of the complexity out of the picture and allowing the technology to optimize towards your business objectives, specifically your service levels within the very complex constraints that you have within your supply chain. So really no way to achieve that level of efficiency in hitting targets unless you have that underlying optimization and automation, which is the core digital planning transformation.
Great. And Ashok, back to you. Clearly part of the digital transformation for Tirehub was what David was talking about. One thing would be right inventory in the right place. And then you mentioned, we sort of talked through, being able to get stuff to people when they want it, right? Reliably. So we've talked about your warehouse footprint across the nation. From a supply chain point of view, is there anything else involved in what you were trying to do?
Yeah, sure. So I think let me I guess define the term digital transformation, and I'll use a stat first to kind of make the point. Is when Tirehub opened its door to do business in 2018, the first few months, 30% of our volume came through our digital channel, which was our B2B portal, right? Starting of this year, 2021, 85% of our volume or transactions come through digital channels. So I guess that, to me, the folks or customers who were on the phone channel actually are transacting through digital channels. And for that to happen, I think it's not just that we do three things, which are very, very fundamental and it's simple in many ways. I tell my team all the time, we need to be able to connect the demand to supply in real time, right? So that means I need to be in major retailers, POS systems, and others so that they don't have to swivel chair to go to my B2B portal, right? Basically, right there when the customer is standing, I need to be in the POS system. That's one. Number two is making sure the right product is at the right place at the right time. And this is where absolutely ToolsGroup comes into play, and they're helping us through that, solving that problem with seasonality and what have you. And then once that happens, we got connected the demand to the supply, we have the right supply at the right place. Then the last bit, which is far more stringent than Amazon Prime, if you think about it, Amazon Prime's got a 1 day, lead time these days. In most cases, our situation is we have 4 to 6 hour window that we got to deliver. So how do you put the right route logistics in place and deliver the right product in the right time and to meet that SLA that the customer set? So to me, digital transformation is not just, hey, I open up a website, it all looks cool. It's the whole entire value chain or ecosystem, end-to-end transaction need to happen in a fast-paced environment. That's to me, enabling the business in a way that you're able to conduct your business digitally. And the last point I would make is yet to be seen. Right before COVID, 75% of our volume was coming through digital channels while we've grown year over year, at a pretty healthy pace. Since COVID, our numbers have gone up of how customers are buying from our digital channels, which is a great news for us. Now, more to be seen where they are, but our target is to get 95% of our transactions through a digital channel and only 5% exception basis, large orders, et cetera, come through other channels.
So since we've got two experts here sort of on the inventory problem, right inventory, right place, maybe we could start with you, Ashok, and talk about why you ended up selecting ToolsGroup, the kind of data you need to do a really good inventory optimization. And then I'll let David throw his 2 cents in on sort of the complexities around this after Ashok is done.
Sure. So first and foremost, I think much like, as I said, we're a young company, and the whole fabric of the company is pretty entrepreneurial in that sense, right? When the company was founded, a lot of the growth we've seen wasn't just handed to us. We had to go find it, right? Find new customer channels, et cetera, integrate, et cetera, and get the volume up and done. While we were looking at the demand supply planning side of the house, we looked at, much like anybody else, was looked at all the industry leaders without going into the names. But at the end of the day, there are two parts that really made the difference when we selected ToolsGroup. One, most providers do this, right? And the differentiating factor for me with ToolsGroup was one of the way they do it, probabilistic model that they use. And then the second piece was their hunger to solve my business problems, as opposed to most technology software vendors. Here's a solution, or here's the hammer, where's the nail. There was immense amount of flexibility from ToolsGroup's leadership to really get into the weeds of our business and how they can adapt their tool to meet our business objectives. And those two were key components. We've completed a couple of phases, continue to deploy more phases this year, but so far it's been a great journey with them. Beautiful.
And I sort of want to push on the data thing, but before I do, my perspective, and either of you can disagree with me, is forecasts are better if you have downstream data. If you have point of sale data, if you have, what customers are actually buying, you can do a better job forecasting, particularly in the short term. But there are other, forms of data that we can go out there and grab and potentially can make that forecast even better. So perhaps you could talk about what kind of data you're grabbing and the predictive value associated with that.
And Steve, let me jump in on that one. The obvious starting point is sales history, right? And so having an accurate record of what was sold, when and where, then the forecast analytics can generate a time-based, SKU-based, location-based forecast. The overlay on that is to pick up and use machine learning around external variables and causal factors. So, why did this pattern emerge, and can I start to understand how external factors would drive changes in the behavior over time? So by applying those additional external variables, causal factors as overlays on top of the direct sales out data, you can continue to refine and enhance the forecast. But the challenge here, excellent forecast is a really good starting point, right? But now the question is, what are you going to do within the constraints of your inventory? Lead times, minimum lot size, constraints with supplier availability. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to get to is a business objective, right? Ultimately, the top line and bottom line that the Tirehub is delivering to its stakeholders in Goodyear and Bridgestone. And that requires optimization. So given the constraints and the behavior of my inventory laid on top of this forecast, how can I best achieve our business objectives? And that's where service level comes in, right? Because ultimately, that's your effectiveness in meeting customer demand. But there's always trade-offs. I can't have unlimited inventory. The Tirehub's mission is to accelerate the velocity of inventory. And this is literally written on the walls in some of the rooms and part of people's objectives there. And we had the direct executive sponsorship of the CEO, Peter Gibbons, setting real clarity, we're going to increase our turns, right? But to do that, you need to have automated optimization because of the complexity involved in the SKUs, the locations, the changes in demand, and the critical need to make a balanced choice about how you're going to hit service level by SKU, by category, by region, and in the aggregate.
And Ashok, do you have anything to add to that?
One thing that I'd like to add, that's great, David, your additions there. One thing that as we go into the year 3 of our existence, one of the things that we're trying to really focus on is the top tier customers, right? We have 2 types of business, what we say direct sale and then transfer. We're transferring on behalf of Bristow and Goodyear, right? They're like large retailers. But the independent dealers is where we have significant seasonality or purchase pattern variance, right? That David was talking about. So one of the things we're trying to do is let me give you an example. So if the types of cars that are sold from what we call car parks in Northeast versus Southeast versus West Coast are different, right? And the car and the tires that go on that are different. So one of the things that as we move into next phase of our evolution, we're looking to do auto replenishment for some of these independent dealers, right? Look to how do we go about doing that? And one of the important piece of data that relies on that is a car park in that geographic location. We haven't gotten there, but that's one thing that we're going to start to add to the data set, to David's point, and add another variable to the mix so that we have a better forecasting accuracy.
Beautiful. And David, I want to go back to something you said. I may have a misunderstanding of ToolsGroup, but you talked about constraints. So I saw your model as being a demand/inventory optimization model, and the inventory optimization forecast accuracy is a feed. The better the forecast accuracy, the better the optimization. But you mentioned the word constraints, and you mentioned, for example, supplier lead times. Are there other constraints? And I mean, do you have a supply model attached to this demand model?
Yeah, we're actually, and in certain portions of the tool, you actually see a visual representation of the supply chain network, all of the echelons, the points at which the product travels to get ultimately to the point of consumption. But within the matrix of the model, there are multiple constraints that can be set in order to represent real-world behavior, not just supplier lead time, but supplier consistency. What's their percentage effectiveness of hitting their lead time? What is their minimum lot size for orders? And this can be done across all SKUs and all supply channels. So then the model, when this optimization runs, it's saying it has the real world behavior of the model, and then it's mapping that to the range of probability of demand, so you can specifically map achieving target service level within those constraints. And one constraint, honestly, is cost, right? There are capital constraints to any business, as there is for Tirehub. And so you can constrain total cost in the model, and the model within those supplier constraints and within those business constraints around cost or revenue target, for example, it will automate making the best mix decision on what I have where, when.
Yeah. I want to ask another question, you, David, and maybe I'm just becoming an old codger, right? But in this industry, we're starting to hear about digital twins. And to me, a digital twin is a supply chain model, or is it a supply chain model plus something else? I'd like your perspective. What am I missing here?
Yeah, no, great question, Steve, because it's one of the most overused terms. Yes, 10 different people in the industry, what a digital twin is, you'll get 10 different answers, right? There are companies that are focused on end-to-end transformation, on supplier collaboration, on trying to create a digital representation of the communication, the human communication. The digital twin that we're focused on is actually the real world behavior of your core supply chain. What really happens, and then based on a model of what really happens, how do I optimize towards a business outcome that I'm trying to get to? So we're focused in on that core supply chain planning function, building a digital model of the behavior of your supply chain, and that feeds the optimization engine.
Beautiful. Ashok, back to you. So we've talked quite a bit about supply chain planning as one of the technology tools that you needed for your transformation. Are there other technology tools that you guys have invested in?
Yeah, so I think going back to the first point that I made about the three things that we do on the digital connectivity perspective, right? As I said, we have, much like our competition, a very solid B2B portal with rich features. Then in terms of, we have API and microservices, which are based on MuleSoft. That's one of the technologies that we use. Fairly flexible in the sense we have that lets us connect to customers who want to connect with us anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on the size and complexity. But it also, that piece of technology also helps us integrate with a lot of the legacy EDI transactions that happen, and we do all of that through a middleware, Azure-based middleware. Obviously for supply and demand planning, we have ToolsGroup as a capability. On the delivery and route optimization side, we have RoadNet from Omnitrax, which helps us to not only just provide the optimal route, but also helps us in scheduling the right stops and help with fuel savings and efficiencies, etc. Furthermore, I think one of the other things that the industry really works on a very complex financial arrangement, if you will, with lots of rebates and credits and stuff like that. And this is, in most cases, most distributors have tried to solve that problem in a back office environment where, the back office tries to apply those credits on customers' behalf. What we've done is kind of flipped it on its head and really put it all the way out to the customers to self-serve. So for example, I have, call it $3,000 credit from my manufacturer. I have a decision to make when to use and how to use it. It's not left to Tirehub to make that decision. So our customers are loving that fact that they can choose when and how to use those credits, which has become really foundational for us in terms of customer adoption experience, right? So those are some of the core capabilities that we've put in place. On the data and analytics side, obviously, yet again, we're a young company. We're trying to add all the other data sources so we have better business insights in terms of customer behavior, churn, or buying patterns as well. So we have a Microsoft BI platform and analytics on top of that, basically.
Right. And so we've talked about a little bit about the technology, but it's never just about technology. Can you walk me through some of the people issues, some of the process issues, the journey to really getting value out of your technologies?
Sure. It's a great question. So one of the things that my background is I worked in a lot of software industry before this. I was working for a global software company. And when the opportunity came across, I was literally thinking why. And the answer kind of became like, you've solved this problem in various different industry, and this industry is ripe for that level of disruption, right? So going back to the stat that I used early on, right? The company was stood up with 30% of our volume coming from B2B portal. We wouldn't be where we are today with the growth if we didn't have a different tack. So what it required is, I think, and this applies to all my colleagues and whoever are the listeners, most IT functions are technology shops if you think it the right way. What I mean by that is, with the advent of the good or bad, one good thing happened out of COVID is most customers are now, leveraging digital ways to buy stuff rather than going to brick and mortar stores. So with that, what that means is a lot of the companies who are in wholesale distribution side, there's tremendous amount of need for digital transformation. So what this does is, the way we looked at it is looked at the entire industry and the value chain and saw where the gaps were. So like I said earlier on, either people were solving for B2B or B2C. When we look at it from our perspective, we're trying to solve for the end consumer and everything in between. If you solve for that, and you remove all the friction in the transaction. So that required a significant mindset shift first, and then also building a team around people who are software centric and building capabilities around that. So that was a big thing. So from the time that I started to where we are today, we've really transformed in terms of our skill set and what we're delivering.
And David, I want to ask you sort of the same thing, right? We've done ROI research on supply chain planning in the past. It's been a while. And the payback is almost always under 2 years. uh, but some people get paid back faster. What are the customers that really get the fastest and the best ROI doing that other folks are not doing?
Yeah, really, really great question. And you've got a customer in Tirehub who's demonstrating that. I spoke earlier about CEO Peter Gibbons' really active sponsorship of this. They recognize this digital transformation and supply chain planning was fundamental to their business. They're going to run their business on this platform. And having clarity on business objectives, what you're trying to achieve, and having active executive sponsorship and having that communication to all the team members, this is at a business level what we're trying to accomplish, then becomes part of a regular value planning and review cadence to say, okay, are we getting to where we need to be from a business outcome standpoint, right? This is not just about standing up the technology, but are we seeing the pathway towards getting the results in our key performance indicators that we need to see? So, I really can't overemphasize the importance of executive sponsorship and clear alignment on a value plan. We work on the value plan really before we even get to contract signature with our customer. And in the case of Tirehub, this was quite easy because they had total clarity. I mean, they're a new business now 2 years into it that had absolute clarity on what they were going to deliver to the market for the benefit of their stakeholders in Goodyear and Bridgestone. So it really makes it easier to stay aligned and keep focus on what matters most and not get lost on distractions.
Yeah, and if I can add one point to David's comment there, the whole mantra at Tirehub is crawl, walk, run, and anything we do. So, for example, literally right before this meeting, I was in a discussion with our supply chain team. We have a goal this year to increase our forecast accuracy by X% without going into detail. And literally, what are the things, what initiatives are going to drive us and how we're going to get that inflection point, right? We went to David's point, when we started, we were on spreadsheets. We couldn't sustain that for long term. We implemented phase 1 of ToolsGroup, got that forecast accuracy like 3 times over, and now the plans are to slowly increase with machine learning and other pieces in place. So I think the most important thing to answer your question, I would say, is most companies get hung up with going for the shiny object and the endpoint. Like, as a technologist, I'm still excited about machine learning, but without the basics, I don't think we can even get there. So I think that's ROI can be within 6 or 9 months if you really laser focus on that interim deliverables, if you will.
Yeah, with well-aligned projects, Steve, we see full payback in the first year of production, and with a positive ROI in the first year of production. So, but again, it requires that clarity on business outcome and this crawl, walk, run approach. The example that Ashok gave around in phase 2, we're applying the machine learning intelligence now, looking at deeper into seasonality and regional behaviors and so forth. So, again, it all comes back to, are we getting the outcome that we set out to achieve?
So both of you gentlemen have brought up machine learning at various points in time. And, the codger in me is coming out again. I believe in machine learning, right? I know it can improve forecasts. But I talked to some of the folks in the industry. It's almost like this magic wand. We're gonna wave our wand, and magically everything is going to be great. So let's start. What is machine learning, and when does it work well, and when does it not work well?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Steve. From our perspective, ToolsGroup has applied machine learning all the way since 2009, before, as you say, it became a fashionable term in the marketplace. The trick is acquiring a usable signal from external data. And when machine learning is applied correctly against an external time series data set, you can then see if a usable signal emerges, right? So that's, again, applying it in an intelligent way to see a step change in terms of the forward accuracy of your forecast based on external variables is one of the really critical applications for our customers. As an example, the seasonality is allergy season, right? And looking at time series data on pollen count and seeing if there's a correlation of that to sales of certain pharmaceuticals. We're going to uncover related seasonal impacts for Tirehub's business as we get into the machine learning and looking at external variable time series.
So
yeah.
So I'm going to try and give much more of a simpler answer because David did a very good job of technical answer and with lots of terminology that we've heard. At the end of the day, as I see it, machine learning or AI I see that as the icing on the cake, not the cake itself, right? And it will be foolish of me to come and predict what's going to happen because we're still in the process of implementing that. But from my perspective, I think there are two themes that I always look for, and I'm hoping we'll solve that, is the behavior that a human eye or basic system automation did not pick up, or a pattern or insight that we didn't know. Is that something that by adding this variable, this machine learning can give us that, right? So let's talk about this specifically. The one we were talking earlier about, Newark, New Jersey, most of the cars are X type, and they always put these extra rims. I grew up and went to college in Newark, so I kind of know where they always put custom wheels and rims on it. So there's custom tires required. So based on the car park data and the user behavior and other data sets, can I emerge a demand that my customer would have that I couldn't put it out in the naked eye? Is how I see it. Hopefully we see that icing on the cake is where I see it. And obviously there are other patterns that we can see, but again, I want to actually prove this experiment myself, just like we've done in other areas, to really pass a judgment on it, right?
Well, before we get done, I want to talk about benefits, Ashok. So, typically around supply chain planning, what you're looking for is sort of reducing the amount of inventory needed and your cash position to meet a service level. But you guys started from scratch, right? So in effect, the business benefit for you guys has to be Bridgestone was selling this many tires and Firestone was selling this many tires. And we came in and we spent capital and we actually built extra DCs beyond what those two companies had. Do the sales that you have achieved make this a good business case for Bridgestone and Firestone?
So I think in the larger scheme of things for Bridgestone and Goodyear, being a young company, we're still, without going into numbers, we're a small fraction of their total business, right? And we continue to grow, right? The sole reason why Bridgestone and Goodyear created this entity called Tirehub is to kind of make sure the customers are on the tires they love, but also make sure that entire experience is easy for my customers and their customers as well, right? That's at the onset of it. In terms of benefits, I think, to your point, we were a young company. We were running stuff on spreadsheets. We knew pretty early on that's not sustainable for an enterprise such as this size, right? What we've seen, unlike most other companies, company A may go from tool A to B or C or whatever, right? From us, it's been an astronomical jump from going from spreadsheets in terms of forecast accuracy in the first 6-9 months, right? And I feel like we're still scratching the surface on that with what David talked about. So we're in the middle of that journey, if you will. And the way I look at it is we need to really finish this deployment all the way across all the phases. And then this is the only way Tirehub is going to increase that market share that both Bridgestone and Goodyear have. And like I said, we're a fraction of it. We can easily double, but I think this tool really brings that, enables that, growth for us.
You have been growing fast, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And even though you're a small fraction, you're focused very much on replacement tires, right?
Yes.
Do you have a sense that your growth is bigger than what it would have been if Bridgestone or Goodyear had continued to do it the old way?
Hands down. I think hands down, no question about it. Like I said, the first bit, the digital connectivity, like without going into names, we've provided access to both Bridgestone and Goodyear in the new markets that they never had before, right? And that's number one. And number two is they did a smart move by giving it the right team that is more focused on supply chain logistics, last mile, which is they're very good at manufacturing tires, but we're very good at distribution logistics. So creating that entity is giving them the breadth and the depth and the speed of how they want to grow the marketplace.
Right. I want to cover one more topic before we come to the end of our time here. How have things gone during COVID?
So first and foremost, we last year, now 2020, while we will all want to put that behind us, fortunately for our business, we did fairly well. Yes, we didn't meet all the objectives, much like any other company, but at the end of the day, we did really well considering what actually happened with the entire pandemic. That said, I think the core thing what we learned through the process is, and this is why I was using that stat, yet to be proven, right? We went from 75% digital transactions to 85, 86 this start of this year, right? Even last year, end of last year. I think it's a great indication that the things that we put in place are really working. And I can't speak for my competition, but at the same time, our customers also realize that they can't be in their office all the time because of all the reasons we talked about. So they need to be able to transact and do the business anywhere, anytime. And I think we are enabling that ecosystem for our customers. And the things that we put in place 18 months ago really came in handy for us. And the fact that we achieved most of our goals last year, I think that foundation that we laid was absolutely critical. The second piece, that goes without saying, and David would agree to this, the biggest asset Tirehub has, it's its people. It's just, this team's got some sense of purpose, or I can't put my finger on it. No, we've had so many challenges from day one, but every time we've come out on the other side with a brighter, color or mindset, if you will.
And David, what's your perspective? And this is we're really getting close to the end of our time here. But what's your perspective on how COVID is going to change supply chain management?
Yeah, no, great question, Steve. And the tough lesson is that having a resilient supply chain is critical for sustainability and performance within your industry. At some level, Tirehub being so new at their business and so deeply focused at a team level on what they're doing, they were kind of all hands on deck at every moment for this and ready to respond immediately to the challenges they faced. But ultimately building that resilience into your technology, in our case, optimizing to get the best outcome from the inventory that you have available. But this complexity that the dramatic variations in demand have introduced for customers. We have businesses that we work with where one business unit has had dramatic acceleration and other dramatic reduction. This in industrial and residential cleaning chemicals company. And so it takes a team effort with the ToolsGroup team and the customer team to really look close in day to day on how you're using the information and what additional techniques you can provide and apply. example at McDonald's Mesoamerica, they use a 2-day demand interval now because they realized they had to get a much accelerated signal. The industrial chemicals company that I talked about, they look at daily demand variation reports to see how things are spiking so they can make some intelligent commercial overrides on the machine generated forecast. We have a company, Franke, who is a kitchen equipment manufacturer. They're applying techniques like overlaying dummy demand. You have a period where demand was just collapsed because of COVID. If you use that trailing history to do your forward forecast, you're going to be misguided. So being able to reach back to a normal period and apply the broad demand set of SKUs and locations over top of the trailing history allows for a predictable, accurate forecast going forward. That happens only with team effort, right? Being a real partner with our customer and working very close in on the business results they're trying to achieve, right? The value plan that we're trying to get to. But it's a human effort to respond and to be creative about how you're applying the technology to get the outcome.
And one last point on that, Steve, to David's point, because of COVID, the supply constraints that we've had are not a little blip on the radar. They're here to stay for foreseeable future, right? Everybody's adjusting to that at the end of the day. And then as a result of that, I think the customer buying patterns are also shifting, right? I think anybody in this space have to be careful not to miss that point, right? If the demand is there, I'm just making up an example. If the Toyota Camry is the most famous car or the most sold car, and if it's not there, people are going to go to Hondas or something, and it's hard to get that back. So that has to be factored into this, getting the demand signals accurate going forward and predicting that and adjusting to that. I think, and for most supply and demand planning tool, this is a new variable that got thrown into it that has never been seen. So I think it's a living legend, if you will. It'll take some time for us all to get adjusted to that.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. This was excellent content. And I'll take blame for there being no live question and answer. I just knew that this was an extraordinary story. I wanted to take every minute we could. But both David and Ashok have agreed that if you want to email them some questions, they will answer them. And so just go ahead and the emails are up there on the screen. Just go ahead and send them a question if you have one. And with that, I think we'll sign off, and I'll say thank you to the participants, and thank you to everyone that tuned in to watch this. Have a great day.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ashok. Great to be with you.